The morning sun cast long shadows across the fields of New Seoul Colony. Minji wiped sweat from her forehead as she checked the nutrient levels in the hydroponic tanks. The green plants swayed gently in the artificial breeze, their leaves healthy and bright. "The tomatoes are ready for harvest," Hannah called from across the greenhouse. She held up a perfect red fruit, smiling at her friend. "Colony Director Kim will be happy with this batch." Mingi walked over to examine the tomato. At 22, she was 3 years older than Hannah. But they had been best friends since Hannah's family arrived on New Seoul 5 years ago. Both women had grown up on this peaceful farming world, far from the busy centers of human space. "We should start picking them after lunch," Mingi said. "The transport ship arrives tomorrow, and these need to be packed properly for the journey to Earth." New Seoul was one of the Outer Rim colonies, established only 15 years ago. The planet had good soil and plenty of water, making it perfect for growing food to send back to the more crowded human worlds. Life here was simple and quiet. Most colonists liked it that way. The two friends worked in comfortable silence, casting water levels and adjusting growing lights. The greenhouse was their responsibility, and they took pride in their work. The colony depended on food production to survive and trade with other human settlements. Around midday, they took a break and sat outside the greenhouse. The colony's main settlement spread out before them, with about 3,000 people living in neat houses and work buildings. Children played in the streets while adults went about their daily tasks. "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to visit Earth," Hannah said, looking up at the clear blue sky. "My parents always talk about the big cities and all the people." Minji nodded. "Maybe someday, but I like it here. It's peaceful. No crime, no pollution, no crowds pushing you around." They had no idea that their peaceful world was being watched, high above the planet's atmosphere. 3 ships hung in the darkness of space. They were sleek and black, designed for speed and stealth. The ships belonged to the Valkyrie Empire, a race of reptilian beings who made their living by raiding weaker worlds and taking slaves to sell on the lead ship's bridge. Commander Sect studied the data about the human colony below. His yellow eyes glowed as he read the reports his scouts had gathered over the past week. "A farming world," he hissed to his second officer. "Weak defenses. No military ships in orbit. These humans will be easy prey." The Valkyrie had discovered humanity only recently. Human expansion into space was still new and limited. Most human colonies, like New Seoul, had only basic defensive systems, designed more for asteroid protection than military threats. "How many subjects shall we take?" asked the second officer. "As many as we can transport," Sect H replied. "Young humans sell well in the markets. They are strong and adapt quickly to different environments." The Velkar Empire controlled a large section of the galaxy. They were older and more advanced than humanity, with better weapons and faster ships. For centuries, they had raided primitive worlds, taking whatever they wanted. To them, humans were just another source of profit. Back on the planet's surface, Minji and Hannah returned to their work in the afternoon. The greenhouse was warm and humid, filled with the smell of growing plants. They moved between the growing beds, harvesting vegetables and checking for problems. Suddenly, the colony's alarm system began to wail. Both women froze, looking at each other in confusion. The alarm had never sounded before, except during monthly tests. "How's happening?" Hannah asked, fear creeping into her voice. Before Mingi could answer, the building shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling as the lights flickered. Through the greenhouse windows, they could see people running in the streets outside. The colony's communication system crackled to life. Director Kim's voice filled the air, tight with panic. "All citizens, take shelter immediately. We are under attack by unknown ships. This is not a drill. Seek cover and avoid open areas." Minji grabbed Hannah's hand. We need to get to the emergency shelter. They ran toward the greenhouse exit, but the building shook again, more violently this time. Glass walls cracked, and several panels shattered, sending fragments across the floor. Outside, the sky had turned dark with smoke. Strange ships flew overhead, firing bright beams of energy at buildings and vehicles. The peaceful colony was being torn apart. The shelter is too far, Minji shouted over the noise of explosions. We need to hide here. They crawled under one of the metal growing tables, holding each other as the attack continued around them. Through gaps in the table legs, they could see the destruction outside. The attacking ships were like nothing they had ever seen. They moved with deadly purpose, targeting the colony's communication towers and defense systems first. Within minutes, New Soul's ability to call for help was cut off. Then came the ground troops. Tall, reptilian creatures in dark armor poured out of landing craft. They moved through the colony systematically, using strange weapons that fired energy nets to capture fleeing colonists. The aliens showed no mercy, taking men, women, and children alike. Stay quiet, Minji whispered to Hannah, who was crying silently beside her. The greenhouse door exploded inward. 3 Valkyrie soldiers entered, their lizard-like heads turning as they scanned the building. They moved on 2 legs like humans, but their skin was scaly and green, and their eyes glowed with an eerie light. The soldiers began overturning tables and equipment, acute, searching for hidden colonists. Minji and Hannah pressed themselves against the floor, trying to become invisible. One of the aliens walked directly toward their hiding spot. His clawed feet clicked against the concrete floor. Minji could smell something like rotting fish mixed with metal. The soldier stopped right beside their table. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then a scaled hand reached down and grabbed Minji's arm, dragging her out into the open. No, Hannah screamed, scrambling out to help her friend. The Valkyrie soldier made a sound that might have been laughter. He spoke into a device on his wrist in a language the women couldn't understand. Within seconds, 2 more soldiers arrived. The aliens used their energy weapons to wrap both women in glowing nets that tingled painfully against their skin. No matter how hard they struggled, the nets only grew tighter. Minji and Hannah were dragged outside to join a growing group of captured colonists. They could see their neighbors and friends, all trapped in the same energy restraints. Some people were injured from trying to fight back or escape. Colony Director Kim was among the prisoners, his face bleeding from a cut above his eye. He looked at the 2 women with deep sadness. I'm sorry, he whispered. I failed to protect you. The Valkyrie commander, Seeked, walked among the prisoners, examining them like livestock. When he reached Minji and Hannah, he stopped, and 3 weeks had passed since the attack on New Seoul. Minji opened her eyes in the darkness of the slave ship's holding cell. Her body ached from sleeping on the cold metal floor, and her stomach felt empty and sick. The journey through space had been terrible. Valkyrie kept their prisoners in cramped metal boxes with barely enough room to sit up. The air smelled bad, and the food was a gray paste that tasted like nothing. Many of the older colonists had become very sick during the trip. Minji, are you awake? Hannah whispered from the corner of their small cell. Yes, Minji replied softly. Did you sleep at all? A little? Hannah's voice was weak. The past weeks had been hard on both of them, but especially on the younger woman. She had lost weight, and her once bright eyes now looked dull and tired. The ship suddenly shuddered and began to slow down. Through the tiny window in their cell, they could see they were approaching a huge planet covered in red and orange colors. Strange-shaped buildings rose from the surface like twisted spires. We're here, Minji said quietly. A Valkyrie guard appeared at their cell door. He was smaller than the soldiers who had captured them, but his yellow eyes were just as cold. Get up, humans. Time to make yourselves ready for market. The cell door opened with a hiss of air. Minji and Hannah were pulled out and forced to walk down a narrow corridor with the other surviving prisoners. Director Kim was still with them, but he looked much older now. Several of the colonists had died during the journey, their bodies simply taken away by the guards. They were brought to a large room filled with water sprays. Valkyrie guards used hoses to wash the prisoners roughly, scrubbing away weeks of dirt and sweat. The water was cold, but it felt good to be clean again. Must look good for buyers, one guard said in broken human speech. Dirty slaves bring less money. After the washing, they were given simple gray clothes that were too big for most of them. Then came the chains. Heavy metal bands were locked around their wrists and ankles, connected by short chains that made walking difficult. Stay together, Mingi whispered to Hannah as they were led off the ship. The spaceport was unlike anything they had ever seen. Aliens of dozens of different species walked around freely. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange that Minji couldn't understand how they moved or breathed. The air smelled of spices and chemicals she didn't recognize. But what shocked her most were the other groups of chained prisoners being led through the port. Humans were just one of many species being brought here as slaves. Lucia, she saw tall, blue-skinned people with extra arms, small furry creatures that looked like they might have once been pets, and beings made of what appeared to be living rock. Welcome to Seth Ruck Prime, Commander Seek said as he walked beside the human prisoners. It's the trading heart of this part of the galaxy. Many species come here to buy and sell. They were loaded into ground vehicles and driven through the alien city. Buildings twisted and curved in impossible ways, and the streets were filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Flying vehicles moved overhead in organized streams. Finally, they arrived at a massive building that looked like an arena. Signs in many different languages covered the walls. Bot Mingi could read the human translation on one of them. Grand Auction House. Inside, the building was even bigger than it had appeared from outside. Thousands of seats surrounded a central stage where bright lights shone down. The spectators were already filling the seats, talking excitedly among themselves. The human prisoners were taken to holding cells beneath the arena floor. Here, they met prisoners from other worlds, all waiting their turn to be sold. The conditions were slightly better than on the ship, with actual beds and cleaner water. How long have you been here? Minji asked an elderly, blue-skinned woman in the next cell. 2 months, the woman replied sadly. My world was raided before yours. I have watched many auctions, but no one has bought me yet. They prefer younger workers. Hannah began to cry quietly. The reality of their situation was becoming impossible to ignore. They were going to be sold like animals to whoever would pay. The most a Valkyrie official appeared with a data pad, looking over the human prisoners. These two, he said, pointing at Minji and Hannah. They go up today. Young human females bring high prices. Oh, Director Kim said, stepping forward, despite his chains. Take me instead. Leave the girls alone. The official laughed, a harsh sound, like metal scraping stone. You are old, human. No one wants to buy old slaves. These young ones will work for many years. Mingi and Hannah were separated from the other colonists and taken to a preparation area. Here, alien attendants checked their health, looking at their teeth and muscles like they were horses being sold. It was humiliating, but the two friends held hands and tried to stay strong. Remember, Minji whispered, no matter what happens, we stick together. We survived this. Hannah nodded, trying to be brave. Above them, the auction was beginning. They could hear the excited voices of the crowd and the booming voice of the auctioneer speaking in the Valkyrie language. Other prisoners were being led up to the stage, and they could hear bidding wars starting over the most valuable ones. Lot number 47, called a voice over the communication system. 2 young human females from the newly discovered world. Rare specimens, excellent for household service or labor duties. It was their turn. Min, G, and Hannah were pushed up a ramp toward the stage. The bright lights made it hard to see, but they could make out hundreds of alien faces staring at them from the seats. Some looked curious, others calculating, and a few seemed hungry in a way that made both women feel sick. The auctioneer was a large Valkyrie with decorative scales covering his arms. He spoke into a device that translated his words into dozens of languages at once. "Look at these specimens," he announced. "Young, healthy, from a world where humans do farm work. They know how to grow food and work with their hands. Very valuable skills." The bidding started immediately. Lights began flashing in different sections of the arena as various aliens made offers. The price climbed rapidly as species competed against each other. Minji saw a group of insect-like creatures in one section, their multifaceted eyes glowing as they bid. In another area, tall gray beings with large heads whispered among themselves before raising their own offer. "We have reached 50,000 credits," the auctioneer announced. "Do I hear 60? The price kept climbing. Realize that they were worth more money than most colonists on New Sol would see in their entire lives. The thought made her feel even more sick. But something else was happening. The back of the auction house, technicians were recording everything. The entire auction was being broadcast across subspace networks as entertainment for worlds that couldn't attend in person. The signal traveled through space at faster than light speed, reaching civilizations hundreds of light years away. Most species that received it saw just another slave auction. Nothing unusual. The emergency alert reached Earth at 3 in the morning, local time. Admiral Tae-Young Kim was pulled from his sleep by the urgent communication from Space Command. He dressed quickly and made his way to the military headquarters in Geneva. The command center was already buzzing with activity when he arrived. Officers and analysts crowded around screens showing the slave auction broadcast. The same terrible images played over and over. Minji and Hannah standing in chains while alien voices bid on them like they were farm animals. "How long ago was this recorded?" Admiral Kim asked the intelligence officer. "The signal was broadcast live 6 hours ago, sir. We estimate it took about 2 hours to reach our monitoring station." The auction happened on a world called Sethrak Prime, approximately 400 light years from Earth. Admiral Kim watched the broadcast again, his jaw tightening with each replay. Kia spent 30 years in the Earth Defense Force, fighting pirates and protecting colonies. Kia, but he had never seen anything like this. "Me a connection to the president," he ordered. "And wake up every member of the Defense Council. We need an emergency session within the hour." As word spread through Earth's government, similar scenes were playing out across human space. On Mars, the colonial governor called an immediate assembly. On the mining stations around Jupiter, workers stopped their shifts to watch the broadcast. Every human settlement, from the inner planets to the farthest outposts, received the same horrible images. The public reaction was instant and explosive. Social networks crashed as millions of humans shared the auction video. Protests formed outside government buildings on every human world. The message was clear and universal. "Bring our people home." President Sarah Chen addressed the nation from her emergency bunker beneath Geneva. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with anger. "My fellow humans," she began, "today we have witnessed something that strikes at the very heart of what it means to be human. 2 of our daughters have been taken from us, sold into slavery, by creatures who see us as nothing more than property." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "This cannot stand. This will not stand. As of this moment, Earth is mobilizing every resource at our disposal to bring Mingy Park and Hannah Lee home, and to ensure that no human being ever suffers this fate again." Within hours, the largest military mobilization in human history began. Admiral Kim found himself in command of Operation Righteous Fire, the mission to rescue the two women and strike back at the slave trade. But there was a problem. Humanity was still new to space travel. Their longest military campaign had been against pirates in the outer colonies, never more than 50 light years from Earth. The technology needed to travel 400 light years and fight in advanced alien empire simply didn't exist yet. We need more ships, Admiral Kim told the Defense Council. Okay? And we need them modified for long-range combat operations. Defense Minister Park Ji-young stood up from her seat. Admiral, you'll have everything we can give you. But even with every military vessel we have, it won't be enough for an operation this size. That's when Captain Ji-young Park raised her hand. She was no relation to the defense minister, but she commanded one of Earth's largest cargo haulers, a massive ship designed to carry supplies between star systems. Sir, she said, I volunteer my ship for conversion to military use. The cargo bays can hold fighter squadrons, and the hull is strong enough to mount heavy weapons. Her offer started an avalanche. Within hours, civilian ship captains from across human space were volunteering their vessels for the rescue mission. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining ships, even luxury yachts were offered up for conversion to military use. The shipyards around Earth worked around the clock. Civilian vessels were stripped down and rebuilt with armor plating and weapon systems. Cargo holds became fighter bays. Passenger decks were turned into barracks for Marines. Commander Min-ho Lee led the recruitment drive for ground troops. The response was overwhelming. Veterans came out of retirement to join the mission. Young people who had never held a weapon signed up for immediate training. Even colonists from the outer worlds sent volunteers. I've never seen anything like it, Commander Lee reported to Admiral Kim. We have 10 times more volunteers than we can transport. Everyone wants to be part of this. The preparation took 3 months. During that time, the auction broadcast continued to circulate through human space, keeping anger and determination at peak levels. Memorial services were held for the colonists who had died during the slave raid. Angie and Hannah became symbols of humanity's determination to protect its own intelligence. Reports came in from human scouts who had managed to reach the edge of Valkyrie space. The news was not good. The Valkyrie Empire controlled dozens of star systems and had military technology far ahead of anything humanity possessed. Their ships are faster than ours, the lead scout reported. Their weapons are more powerful. They've been doing this for centuries. They know how to fight. Admiral Kim studied the reports in his ready room aboard the flagship, Earth's Fury. The converted battleship had once been a luxury cruise liner, but now it bristled with weapons and carried 3,000 Marines in its converted passenger decks. Numbers, he said to his staff officers. Can't match their technology, but we can't outnumber them. How many ships do we have ready? 847 vessels, sir, his aide replied. Everything from converted destroyers to armed cargo haulers. Its total crew complement is just over 200,000. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, but Admiral Kim wondered if it would be enough. The Valkyrie had been conquering worlds when humans were still learning to make fire. Their experience in space warfare went back thousands of years. But humanity had something the Valkyrie didn't understand. They fought not for conquest or profit, but for something much more powerful. They fought for family. The night before departure, Admiral Kim walked through the ship's corridors. Marines checked their equipment and said goodbye to families over video calls. Fighter pilots ran final simulations. Engineers made last-minute adjustments to weapon systems in the converted cargo bay that now served as a chapel. Hundreds of crew members attended service. The chaplain, a former colony pastor named Reverend Kim, spoke about courage and sacrifice. We go not as conquerors, he said, but as rescuers. We carry the hopes and prayers of every human being in the galaxy. Two of our sisters call out to U.S. across the darkness of space, and we will answer that call. The departure from Earth was broadcast live across human space. Hundreds of ships rose from orbital docks and assembly points, forming into battle groups as they prepared for the long journey to Valkyrie space. Admiral Kim stood on his bridge as Earth fell away behind them. The blue and white marble that had been humanity's home, the Valkyrie patrol ship Scalebreaker, drifted lazily at the edge of the Sethrock system. Commander Vexstar was on routine duty, checking cargo ships coming and going from the slave markets below. It was boring work, but someone had to inspect the traders and raiders who brought new slaves to sell. "Sir," called his sensor operator, "I'm detecting some kind of disturbance in hyperspace. Large mass readings approaching the system." Vexstar barely looked up from his reports. "Probably another slaver convoy. The markets have been busy lately, with all these new species being discovered." The sensor operator looked at his readings. Again, his scaled face showed confusion. "Sir, these readings are much larger than any convoy, and there are a lot of them." Before Vexstar could respond, space itself seemed to tear open at the edge of the system. Blue flashes of light appeared everywhere as ships dropped out of hyperspace. First 10 ships, then 50, then hundreds more. "What is this?" Vexstar hissed, standing up from his command chair. The human fleet materialized like an avenging storm. 847 ships of all sizes spread out across space. At their head flew Admiral Kim's flagship, Earth's Fury, its converted hull bristling with weapons that had never been fired in anger. On the bridge of Earth's Fury, Admiral Kim watched the Valkyrie patrol ship through his view screen. It was smaller than his flagship, but clearly more advanced. The alien vessel had smooth lines and energy weapons that glowed with deadly power. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Valkyrie ship. Put it through." The screen flickered, and Commander Vexstar's reptilian face appeared. His yellow eyes were wide with surprise and growing fear. "Unknown vessels," Vexstar said in accented human speech. "You have entered Valkyrie space without permission. State your purpose or face destruction." Admiral Kim stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "I am Admiral Tae-Young Kim of the Earth Defense Force. We have come to retrieve our people and end your slave trade. Return Menji Park and Hannah Lee immediately, and we might let some of your ships survive." Vexstar's surprise turned to anger. "Humans, you primitive creatures, dare to threaten the Valkyrie Empire? We have ruled this part of space for 1,000 years. You're pathetic. Ships will be destroyed in minutes." "We'll see about that," Admiral Kim replied calmly. The patrol ship fired first, sending a beam of energy toward Earth's Fury. The shot hit the converted cruise ship's new armor plating and scattered harmlessly into space. The Valkyrie weapons were powerful, but human engineers had built their defenses to last. "Return fire," Admiral Kim ordered. Earth's Fury responded with everything it had. Missile launchers that had been mounted in former dining rooms opened fire. Energy cannons built into what used to be swimming pool areas sent streams of plasma toward the Valkyrie ship. The patrol ship tried to dodge, but it was too late. Human weapons, while less advanced, were designed for one thing: destroying whatever they hit. The Scalebreaker exploded in a ball of fire and debris. "First blood to humanity," Admiral Kim said quietly. Across the Valkyrie system, alarm signals began screaming. Defense stations came online as the Empire's military scrambled to respond to this unexpected invasion. They had never seen anything like the massive human fleet on Sethrak Prime. Grand Admiral Sekmer watched the battle reports with growing disbelief. He had commanded Valkyrie fleets for 3 centuries and had never lost a battle. But the human ships kept coming, wave after wave of converted civilian vessels fighting with desperate courage. "How many ships do they have?" he demanded. "Nearly 1,000, sir," his aide replied. "Most appear to be converted cargo vessels, but they're fighting like military warships." Schemer activated his fleet's communication system. "Key, all ships, attack, formation. These humans think numbers will save them." Showed them the power of superior technology. The Valkyrie fleet was smaller than the human armada, but far more advanced. Their ships moved faster and hit harder. Energy shields protected them from human weapons, while their own guns could punch through human armor with ease. The battle began in earnest as the two fleets clashed in the darkness between planets. Valkyrie destroyers darted between the slower human ships, firing precisely aimed shots that destroyed several converted cargo haulers in the first minutes of combat. But something strange happened. When human ships were destroyed, the others didn't retreat or panic. Instead, they moved closer together and fought even harder. Captain Jeong Park commanded her converted cargo hauler, New Hope, in the thick of the fighting. Her ship had been a peaceful trader just months ago, but now it carried 2 squadrons of human fighters and enough firepower to level a city. The carry cruiser, coming in fast, her weapons officer reported. "Port side, closing rapidly." "Turn to face them, Captain," Park ordered. "Fire at will." The Valkyrie cruiser was faster and better armed, but Captain Park had something the alien commander didn't understand. She was fighting for more than just victory. She was fighting to bring 2 young women home. The New Hope's converted cargo bay opened, releasing 40 human fighters that swarmed toward the Valkyrie cruiser like angry hornets. The alien ship's advanced weapons picked off several fighters, but there were too many to stop them all. Human pilots flew their fighters with reckless courage, some ramming directly into Valkyrie ships when their weapons ran out. The aliens had never seen anything like this kind of desperate, fearless combat. "They fight like madmen," one Valkyrie captain reported to his admiral. "They showed no fear of death." Commander Minho Lee watched the space battle from the assault transport vessel Thunderstrike. His job was to lead the ground assault once the fleet reached the planet. But first, they had to get past the Valkyrie space defenses. "Sir," called his aide, "Admiral Kim is requesting all assault ships move to attack position. We're going to make a run for the planet." "Understood," Commander Lee replied. He turned to address his Marines over the ship's communication system. "Listen up, people. We're about to make history. 2 of our own are down there waiting for rescue. Every Valkyrie between us and them is an obstacle to remove. Are you ready?" 3,000 voices answered as one. "Ready, sir." The assault ships broke away from the main fleet battle and headed straight for Sethrock Prime. Valkyrie defense stations fired at them, but the converted ships kept coming. Some were destroyed, but others made it through to the planet's atmosphere. Admiral Kim watched from his bridge as the assault began. His flagship was surrounded by the wreckage of both human and Valkyrie vessels. The space battle was far from over, but his ground forces were already beginning their attack on the slave markets below. "Send a message to all Valkyr ships," he ordered his communications officer. "Tell them this is just the beginning. Tell them that humanity remembers every wrong done to our people. And tell them that we have 800 more ships on the way." It was a bluff. This was every ship humanity could spare. But the Valkyr didn't know that. On the surface of Sethrock Prime, the first human dropships crashed through the atmosphere like falling stars. In the underground slave pens beneath the great auction house, Mingy and Hannah heard a distant thunder of explosions and wondered what was happening. They had no idea that the largest rescue mission in human history had just begun. The age of time. Valkyrie dominance was ending. The age of human expansion had begun, and it had begun with fire and fury that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations to come. The ground shook beneath the slave auction house as human dropships crashed into the city around it. Mingji and Hannah huddled together in their underground cell, listening to the sounds of battle growing closer. Explosions echoed through the tunnels, and they could hear alien voices shouting in panic. "What's happening up there?" Hannah whispered. Before Minji could answer, the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, casting everything in red light. The building shook again, harder this time, and dust fell from the ceiling. Above ground, Commander Minho Lee and his Marines were fighting their way through the streets of the alien city. Valkyrie had never faced ground troops like these. Human soldiers moved with deadly purpose, their weapons cutting through enemy defenses like they were made of paper. "Target the auction house," Commander Lee ordered into his radio. "All units converge on the main building. Our people are somewhere inside." The Marines had trained for months for this moment. They knew the layout of the building from intelligence reports. They knew where the holding cells were located. Most importantly, they knew that every second counted. Valkyrie guards tried to stop them at the auction house entrance, but human rage was unstoppable. The aliens had superior weapons and armor, but they had never fought an enemy that simply refused to give up. Sergeant Yoonji Kim kicked down the main doors and led her squad into the building. The grand auction hall where Minji and Hannah had been sold was now empty, except for scattered alien spectators trying to escape. "Basement level," she shouted to her squad. "Move fast. Find our people." The Marines split up and began searching every corridor and room. The building was massive, with dozens of holding areas and preparation rooms. Other species of slaves cowered in their cells as the human soldiers rushed past, but the Marines' focus was absolute. They had come for two specific people in the command center of the auction house. The Valkyrie overseer Vexter tried desperately to contact his military forces. The communication systems were failing, and he could hear human voices getting closer. He made a decision that would haunt him forever. If he couldn't sell the humans, he would destroy them rather than let them be rescued. "Activate the disposal systems," he ordered his remaining guards. "Kill all the slaves in holding cells 7 through 12. "Do it now." But he was too late. Commander Lee burst into the command center just as the order was given. His rifle fired 3 times, and the Valkyrie overseer fell dead before he could complete his command. "Sir," called one of his Marines over the radio, "we found them. Basement level, holding cell 9. They're alive." Commander Lee felt relief wash over him. On my way, deep underground, Minji and Hannah heard footsteps running toward their cell. They pressed against the back wall, expecting more Valkyrie guards. The past months of captivity had taught them to fear any approaching footsteps. The cell door exploded inward. But instead of reptilian aliens, 3 figures in human military uniforms appeared. The lead soldier removed his helmet, revealing a young Korean face that looked almost as relieved as they felt. "Minji Park and Hannah Lee?" he asked. "Yes," Minji said, hardly believing what she was seeing. "You're human. You're really human." "Sergeant Park Woodgen, Earth Defense Force," the soldier replied with a smile. "We've come to take you home." Hannah began to cry, but for the first time in months, they were tears of joy. "How did you find us?" "The whole galaxy saw what happened to you," Sergeant Park said as he used a cutting tool to remove their chains. "Everyone on Earth watched you being sold like animals. We couldn't let that stand." As the chains fell away, Minji felt strength returning to her body. The other colonists, Director Kim and the others. "Are they here too?" "We're searching for everyone," the sergeant assured her. "But right now, we need to get you out of here. The building isn't secure yet." They were escorted up through the auction house, past the destruction the Marines had caused. The grand hall where they had been sold was now filled with human soldiers securing the area. The auction stage where they had stood in chains was covered in debris. Outside, the alien city was burning. Human fighters screamed overhead, chasing fleeing Valkyrie ships. In the distance, they could see the spaceport where more human dropships were landing. Commander Lee was waiting for them at the extraction point when he saw the two young women walking free, supported by his Marines. He felt the satisfaction deeper than any military victory. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "We're okay," Minji replied, "tired, hungry, but okay. Thank you for coming for us. We never leave our people behind," Commander Lee said simply. The extraction ship lifted off from the burning city, carrying Mingi and Hannah toward the human fleet in orbit. Through the window, they could see the scope of the battle that had been fought to free them. Wrecked ships floated in space, both human and Valkyrie. The cost of their rescue had been paid in blood on the bridge of Earth's fury. Admiral Kim received the report he had been waiting for. "Sir, the package is secure. Both targets are safe and en route to the flagship." Admiral Kim nodded with satisfaction. "Excellent. Now let's finish what we came here to do." He activated the fleet-wide communication system, broadcasting to every human ship and every Valkyrie vessel that could receive the signal. "This is Admiral Taeyong Kim of the Earth Defense Force. Today, you have learned that humanity will travel any distance and fight any enemy to protect our people. We've retrieved what was taken from us, but this is only the beginning." He paused, looking out at the burning Valkyrie homeworld below. "From this day forward, any species that engages in the slave trade will be considered an enemy of humanity. Any world that buys or sells sentient beings will face the same fate as Sethrock Prime. We are putting the galaxy on notice. The age of easy prey is over." The message was broadcast on all frequencies, reaching every corner of the galaxy. Within hours, slave markets on dozens of worlds began shutting down as alien traders realized that humanity was now a force to be reckoned with. When Mingi and Hannah finally reached the flagship, they were greeted by cheering crews and medical staff. The ship's doctor examined them and declared them healthy enough for the journey home. That evening, they sat in the ship's observation deck, looking out at the stars. Earth was still months away, but they were finally free and heading home. "Do you think it will be different when we get back?" Hannah asked. Minji considered the question. Round them, the largest military fleet in human history was preparing for the long journey home. He had come to rescue 2 colonists and ended up announcing humanity's arrival as a galactic power. "Everything will be different," she said finally. "But maybe that's good. Maybe it's time for the galaxy to know that humans don't make good victims." Gods, the fleet jumped to hyperspace in a coordinated flash of blue light, leaving behind a broken Valkyrie empire in a galaxy that would never underestimate humanity again. 6 months later, Minji and Hannah returned to New Seoul, which had been rebuilt and heavily fortified. The colony now served as a forward base for human expansion into the galaxy. Both women joined the Earth Defense Force, determined to ensure that no one else would suffer as they had. The Valkyrie Empire collapsed within a year, its economy destroyed, and its military shattered. Across the galaxy, other species took careful note of what had happened. A new power had emerged, one that fought not for conquest or profit, but for something far more dangerous to slavers and tyrants. They fought for family, and in a galaxy full of predators, humanity had just announced that they were nobody's prey. The 2 girls who had been auctioned in chains had become the spark that lit a fire across the stars. That fire would burn for generations, carrying a simple message to every corner of the galaxy. Humanity had arrived, and they would not be ignored.